What's going on, everybody? Zack Rosenblatt here with Kaye. Preview episode for the last game of the regular season, and if all goes poorly, the last game of the season in general.
You would start it like that.
Start with the negative.
Yeah.
Okay. If the Eagles win, they also go to the playoffs.
I mean, I like our
Save myself there?
I like our good cop, bad cop thing we got going. Yes, those are both correct things.
All right, but yeah, it's one might say it's the biggest game of the season. You know,
I would wager to say this is the biggest game of the season.
Easily their biggest Week 17 game.
Oh, for sure. This is their biggest Week 17
biggest game this week for sure.
Yes, I mean easily,
unquestionably.
Easily,
you can't debate that. You literally can't debate that.
Unless they're playing like a high stakes like game of rock paper scissors in practice that we don't know about.
That'd be pretty. It depends on who's playing though.
Yeah,
like isn't Nate Sudfeld and Josh McCown playing to be the number 2?
Well, the secondary is normally like pretty big on rock paper scissors.
Are they?
In the locker room.
From the locker room.
Craven LeBlanc, real note, is known as a really good.
They also play that game where they have to you have to go the opposite way of where their hand is pointing. If you go the same way, then they lose. Have you seen them playing that?
Yeah, I saw.
They do that all. I've never seen that before in this locker room, but they do it all the time.
I saw Craven LeBlanc do that with Fletcher Cox the other day, and I was
always playing it a lot.
I was confused because I thought he was checking him to see if he had a concussion. I didn't really understand what
concussion protocol. Yeah. That'd be funny if they just used players as secret agents to test guys for concussions. It would. It might be we just came up with a good idea. I think.
Well, Craven LeBlanc didn't play in this last game.
Rick Lovato just randomly going up and guys hey, do you know where you are? Do you know what day it is?
Excuse me, Rick Lovato is a Pro Bowler.
He's a Pro Bowler. Okay, so people should be going up to him.
Put some respect on his name.
My apologies. All right, anyway. To get serious. All right, before we do start talking stuff, I do have to remind you guys to sign up for our Eagles Extra. If you were on our Eagles Extra, you got a text message before anybody else about Jordan Howard being cleared for contact. I sent that out immediately. With some analysis. And Mike and I have been doing that a lot. We've been sending stuff from the locker room. We've been sending some thoughts, asking for questions. We've had a lot of good engagement. You've been having fun with Eagles Extra? Yeah.
Always having fun. I love getting these text messages because my wife left me, and I just really appreciate. No, I'm just kidding.
That got dark.
No, you know what? It's been really fun. Because I like that ability to go back and forth without it having to be like a super
public thing. Yeah.
Because, there's always some knuckleheads that try to get involved in the conversation that are just getting involved in the conversation.
Or people will take a joke the wrong way or something that.
So it's been cool. And you guys have been able to see kind of our personalities a little bit better, kind of in a one-on-one exchange. But no, it's been fun. And, throughout the off seasons, it can be very important because if you if you remember correctly, we were the first to report a ton of stuff coming out of training camp, a ton of stuff coming out of free agency. So,
and so if you're subscribed, you're going to get that before anybody.
Yep, you'll be able to tell your cousin Paul, hey, yo, check this out. The Eagles just traded for this dude, or this dude signed this dude.
Is that you hit people up like, hey, yo, check this out?
No, that's how I imagine half of our audience does it. But we'll probably get corrected in the comments. It'll be more like, hey, Paul, here. There's no yo.
Did you watch 30 Rock?
I did, but forever ago.
Yeah, well, I just there was a part where Steve Buscemi was pretending to be a younger person. And
young people.
Like that. Just made me think of that. Anyway, so yeah, sign up for that. You can find it at our NJ.com/Eagles. It's in all of our stories. We've been tweeting about it.
Man, this really got off course, this podcast. This is definitely our Week 17 podcast.
The first ever Steve Buscemi mention on this podcast.
Which is a shame, to be honest.
He's a legend. All right, anyway, so on to football stuff. But sign up for that. It's still free for 2 weeks, so capitalize on that opportunity. All right, to the Giants. So I mentioned this. We can talk about it first. Jordan Howard finally cleared for contact. It's been lingering since the bye week, actually, because he got hurt during the Bears game before the bye week. He basically missed half the season now. And a lot has changed. He's coming back to a much different running back group. As you guys know, Miles Sanders has just been absolutely stellar the last few weeks. He's kind of vaulted himself into the offensive rookie of the year discussion. We'll talk about that in a minute. He's probably still a long shot to actually win, but he's certainly in the discussion. Which, if you had said that in the beginning of the season when people were saying he should be benched and all that stuff, it's crazy just to think how much that dude has developed. He's putting together one of the best rookie seasons in Eagles history, but he wasn't doing that when Jordan Howard got hurt, where Jordan Howard was kind of carrying the team. He was we talked about he was maybe their best, most consistent offensive player outside of Brandon Brooks to that point. And now all of a sudden you have Boston Scott, who was probably on the practice squad at that point.
Yep.
Right? And he's proved that he deserves to be part of this rotation. And Doug pretty much said, even though Jordan's coming back, this is Miles Sanders is the number one guy, which I think is pretty telling considering like the level of touches Jordan Howard was getting before he went down. Like, but how do you think they probably wouldn't play him that much this week? I imagine unless they get a blowout and they're trying to see how he's feeling or something like.
So I knew JHI, who was waived on Tuesday. We'll get some into the more like transactional news later, but I knew he was done when he didn't play 2 straight games that he dressed for. I mean, it was pretty obvious.
We knew he was done when he was playing.
So the Eagles have proven that they can play a full game with 2 running backs. I would imagine Jordan Howard's an in case of emergencies kind of fella this week. The positive news here is if they beat the Giants, which in all likelihood they will, he'll be ready for the playoff run. I do agree with Doug. You know, they've game planned for the Giants with Scott and Sanders as the dudes, and that's exactly how they should treat it. Go with the hot hand. And I think when you look at the way Miles Sanders has played, I think Howard can complement him even better than he did initially because Sanders is able to do more than catch the ball.
Yeah, now it's not like they know they're going to throw it.
Right, so when you do those 2 back looks or you run 22 personnel or 21 personnel with 2 running backs in the backfield, teams have to be aware that Miles can run and catch. And I think that that's very important. I think Boston Scott has played relatively well. You know, they have 3 guys now, and they're going to need these 3 guys in the playoffs because you've got to run the ball efficiently in the playoffs.
And they're still, I mean, unless Deshaun comes back and is himself and they make it that far, you're not going to have the receivers still.
Yeah, and I think we'll get into this a little bit later, but the weather that's expected to take place, and you know, the forecast for Sunday is very gloomy, and in those type of games, you want to be able to run the football effectively.
I mean, look at how they beat the Bills, yeah.
Right, so, which was really the first time that we saw Miles flash as a runner, too. So, it's going to be very interesting. I think when we talk about Miles Sanders, and we talk about that Rookie of the Year conversation, I'd like to say that he deserves it, but here's my thing, and you wrote a great article about why he deserves consideration. I definitely think he deserves consideration.
That was basically my point.
And to a degree, I believe that the Rookie of the Year should be a guy who's had a massive effect on a winning team.
That's his case, basically. That's
right. If you subscribe to that logic, then Miles should be the runaway guy because
the other 2 guys are Josh Jacobs and Kyler Murray,
right?
Who are neither of them have been in playoff contention for weeks. So.
And this has been a running back quarterback award for years because running backs typically can ascend in the league very quickly, and
they're like doing more stuff than a wide receiver or a a tight end or
whatever. And a quarterback is obviously touching the ball in basically every play. Yeah. So. Look, Miles got off to a really slow start, and you wrote this too. I mean, it's incredible his turnaround, but right now he's at 766 rushing yards, 510 receiving yards. He's got 6 total touchdowns, and then he's got the kick return yardage. Something I want to say, the Eagles keep talking about all-purpose yards. I don't care about that. I care about scrimmage yards.
Scrimmage yards, yeah.
So right now he has, if I'm doing the math correctly, carry the thing. He's got 1,276 yards right now.
Well, I'll pull up some
scrimmage
of the stats
yards
I had for my story that kind of like. But you can keep going with your point about why you think he probably isn't going to win is what it sounds like.
Yeah. Well, I think they're going to give it to Jacobs just because he's been able to do...
He has the raw numbers, too.
Yeah, he has the raw numbers. People care about that 1,000-yard mark for rushing, and, you know, he did it in 13 games. He's also a guy who's a great story. I think people are going to cling to that. And, you know, the Raiders have kind of struggled with him being sidelined. So I'm interested to see how they vote. I don't think Kyler Murray deserves Rookie of the Year. I think it should either be Miles Sanders or Jacobs.
If Kyler wins it just because he's a quarterback.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's essentially what it is.
Yeah, and that's why it wouldn't surprise me. But so there are only 4 other running backs who have at least 700 rushing yards and 500 receiving yards this year. And they are Alvin Kamara, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, and Leonard Fournette. I mean, I know you're not a huge Fournette guy, but he is a talented running back, obviously. And then in NFL history, the only rookie running backs to reach that is only 12 other players. And it's a group that includes like Gale Sayers, Marshall Faulk, Reggie Bush, Edgerrin James.
And for the record, Miles Sanders has more touchdowns than Leonard Fournette this year.
Yeah, and so I think Miles Sanders needs to have like a big game this week. Not just
for sure.
He needs to have 150 total yards and 3 touchdowns or something. Because if he does that, he'll both have more touchdowns than Jacobs this year. Because Jacobs, I don't think is going to play this week. He'll have more total yards. I know it's like per game, whatever. But when you look at the raw numbers, his will look better, so he'll have a better chance.
I think,
they'll win the division most likely if he does that.
I think he needs to have a big game, and they have to win the division.
Yeah.
If that this game is basically going to be showcased for the country, and so national writers who vote on Rookie of the Year are going to get to really see him shine. And I do think he is. When we talk about the weather a little bit more, I think he is the X factor in this game. He is the guy, and. Listen, in my opinion, he's their most dependable receiver if Zack Ertz isn't playing, I would be shocked if he plays, based on what I've heard and based on what we've seen.
They added it back to the injury report. Yeah. Not just ribs now.
Yeah, not ideal. And I think you also want to maintain his long-term viability if you make a playoff run, you know.
You don't want to force it against the Dallas.
Right. I think Dallas Goedert's more than capable of playing, but we'll talk about that later. Miles Sanders, to me, is the guy who's going to stir the drink for the Eagles. If he has a big game, they win this game. If he does not, I struggle to find a scenario where they don't get upset. They've got to control the clock. They've got to keep the wide receivers the Giants wide receivers off the field, and they've got to take advantage of turnovers, which Daniel Jones will have at least 2. So, especially because it's raining. But carrying the football is going to be a big deal. You brought up in your article about how he came in with doubts about ball security and blocking and being pass catching. Guess what? He's improved on all 3 of those, and all 3 of those elements of his game will be essential in this game. He's got to hold on to the football. He's got to block well,
especially if Ertz isn't playing. Yeah.
Right, and he's got to catch the ball well because you know they're going to go to him. Had he played like this the entire year, he'd be the runaway Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
What I do find interesting is he's never won a Rookie of the Week thing this season. So no one's won a Player of the Week on the Eagles roster. Yeah, which is interesting.
Because their performances have been so weird.
Yeah, but when you consider the last 2 weeks that Miles Sanders has had, I mean, you would think he'd at least win the Rookie of the Week. But yeah, from there, we brought up Zack Ertz and Lane Johnson. Those are the 2 injuries that we're monitoring coming into this game now that Jordan Howard's been cleared. The feeling I get is Zack Ertz is not going to play, as I said.
They signed Richard Rodgers, which is a pretty clear indication of that.
Right, and Richard Rodgers was playing some special teams reps in practice. Chances are he'll be an emergency guy on offense, but he'll play on special teams, not as meticulous with play calls and everything like that. So you're looking at Josh Perkins and Dallas Goedert. I think Dallas Goedert's ready to have an explosion game.
I mean, he's going to be the number 1 target probably.
Yeah, I mean, and if you look at what he did that last drive of the second quarter, he was targeted 6 straight times.
That kind of was, and that was when Ertz was banged up too.
Right.
It was a nice preview of maybe what's coming this week.
And so I think when you look at the passing options, they called up Deontay Burnett, who's got some experience from his time with the Jets last season.
USC alum.
USC alum, yes. He had a huge Rose Bowl game against Penn State.
He was good in college, yeah. USC receivers always are better in college than the NFL.
Yes. But, I mean, he or Rob Davis will fill that Mac Hollins role where they don't really get targeted.
I would be surprised if either of those guys really got any catches on Sunday. Maybe Davis.
I wouldn't. I mean, there's no with Zack Ertz out there, that's 15 targets you got to make up for. That said, Greg,
I think this might just run it more. But
yeah, well, yeah, of course. Yeah. But I think at some point you're going to have to throw the football. And so at some point, Greg Ward, Dallas Goedert, and Miles Sanders and Boston Scott. So those are the 4 guys you're probably looking at as your main passing options. I think you can see Rob.
Saying that out loud is kind of wild.
I think Perkins could get 1 or 2 catches. I think Davis could have 1 or 2. Burnett 1 or 2. Because they called Burnett up because he had experience, and I think that's notable. If they were just bringing up a guy to be a route runner in a formation like Mac Hollins, they would just bring up Mark Michelle, who's definitely a lot faster and who can definitely get downfield. Let's preemptively rule Zack Ertz out. If that happens, and you don't have Lane Johnson, it's going to be interesting to see how they work the blocking formations because
Giants do have a talented defensive line.
Because Josh Perkins is not a blocker.
No.
And Richard Rodgers hasn't played he didn't even play in the preseason.
In theory, he's the blocking guy. But yeah.
Right. So you're probably actually going to run a lot more 11 personnel, which means, again,
Or 21, yeah.
Well, you would run 21 in theory, probably more than you would.
So much, yeah.
Yeah, so 11 personnel is probably going to be your base, which means Goddard's going to be inline blocking. He's probably going to line up in the slot at sometimes when they do run 22 personnel. But, like, you've got J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who's got a foot injury, and you've got Greg Ward, who are probably your top two wide receivers. You've got Rob Davis coming in 11 personnel, and then you don't know what Burnett is. So it's going to be – well, you still don't know what Rob Davis really is either. Yeah. But Carson's really going to have to choose wisely where he puts the football in this game. They got to go without mistakes. Like, they have to win the turnover battle. It's like we said last week. If they win the turnover battle, they will win that game. They did win the turnover battle. Carson was good with the football. He had the one fumble, but they were able to recover. I don't know. How are you feeling about those weapons going into this game after what you've seen from the last 3 weeks?
Not great, but the Giants secondary is pretty bad. So
really bad.
There's ever Zack Ertz had those big plays against the Giants because he was left wide open.
Yes.
Which is easy to forget. Like maybe if he played, he wouldn't actually get hurt again because they wouldn't touch him. But anyway, so interesting stat. You didn't realize it, but Goddard sneakily has had pretty good numbers this year. A lot of that's because of the last
I did realize
5 weeks. But if he gets 6 more catches, which I imagine he will, I forget what year it was, but they'd be the first team with 2 tight ends with at least 60 catches since Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski. So imagine around 2013 probably.
And it's worth noting, Zach Ertz is number 1 in receiving yards, receptions, and receiving touchdowns. Number 2 is Dallas Goedert in receiving yards. Receiving yards.
You're saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you just look at, we talked before the season how we thought he was going to have a much better year. I think his numbers are probably better than, because we did some predictions. I think they're even better than we probably predicted. He has almost double the receptions, almost double the yards, 1 more touchdown, double first downs. His catch rate's a little lower, but he's had more targets, so that kind of checks out.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had him at 5.
There was a stretch where he was fumbling and dropping, but I think he's figured it out.
I think I had him at 45 catches for 500 yards. So right now he's already exceeded that. 54 catches, 542 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So, I mean, look, I think this guy's ready to be the focal point of this offense if needed. I still think Zach Ertz is the better tight end, but when you look at his ability to block and catch, I think they feel safe about running 11 personnel in that regard. If you're going to run 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end, you better utilize those backs really well. Because, look, both Scott and Sanders can block, but you're going to want to get them involved and get linebackers involved in this game, because whether you have a mismatch with the 2 running backs in the flat, or you need to open up some space for Ward across the middle or what have you, the Giants have to respect the running game, and that's what they're going to key in on anyway, I think.
And speaking of 11, they probably will do a bunch of, I guess if Lane doesn't play, maybe Matt Pryor would be the extra blocker. Or Dillard? No, Dillard.
Dillard would be.
Yeah, so I imagine you'll see a lot of him, becoming an eligible guy or whatever. Let's see. I know you want to talk about how rainy it's going to be.
Yeah, rain. We've had forecasts for crappy weather for the past 5 games, and I think the weather's only affected them once in those things. But right now it does kind of seem like the rain's going to be coming down in this one. It actually seems like the NFL kind of screwed this matchup, because at 1 o'clock, the 1 o'clock, it's a 40% chance of precipitation. At, I think once it gets to 5 o'clock, it's a 90%. So that's kind of a bummer. But we should talk about, when we talk about matchups, rain kind of takes away some stuff, or it enhances one side of a matchup. The Eagles did a really good job of gang tackling against the Cowboys. It's part of the reason why they were able to shut Ezekiel Elliott down. They're going to have to do that in this game against Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley is very good at breaking tackles. He's got a very good, he's got a lot of strength in his lower body, obviously, and he's going to be able to churn out yardage. You have to be able to wrap up as a team. It's not going to just be one guy. If a guy is alone in space, especially if he's a DB, he's done. That's why had this been a clear weather game, I think the Eagles win this one. I'm a little bit more hesitant now that we know that the rain's going to be there, because the rain's an element that can kind of even some odds.
I don't think they're locked to win this game by any stretch.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I also would get concerned about Golden Tate, who's very good about getting yards after the catch anyway. The thing about rain is when it's slippery and you're a wide receiver or you're a running back, you know where you're going, the defender doesn't, which adds to hesitation. It's harder to get your footing. In the same way, as a pass rusher, you know where you're going, the offensive lineman doesn't. So it's easier to get sacks. It's easier to get big plays on offense as well. So, look, the Eagles have a better pass rush, in my opinion. They have a better run defense. But Saquon's a beast.
And he's back to himself.
Yeah, and Golden Tate and Darius Slayton have both shown that they can get significant yards after the catch.
Slayton showed it against the Eagles.
Ronald
Darby, though, yeah.
Ronald Darby got put on IR on Tuesday. They're going to start Rasul Douglas, which I think is somewhat smart because he's the only corner that can actually tackle. Speed's going to be an issue. That said, I don't know how much they're going to want Daniel Jones to push the ball downfield in this game.
If it's raining.
Raining. Now, you wrote about it a couple of weeks ago, but both Daniel Jones and Carson Wentz have issues with holding onto the football in the pocket. Carson's going to have to be very aware in this game, especially if they show blitz. The Giants are playing for pride. They have nothing to lose here except a game.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are all playing for their next job.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think they're playing to keep Pat Shermer's job.
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
I know.
It's the whole idea. Like Lane says this all the time, which sometimes confuses me. But he always talks about even when you're struggling, you're putting tape out there for the other teams or whatever.
Yeah, no, it's true. And the ability to play spoiler to a team that has been your Northeast rival for decades is kind of appealing. If you don't think
it's a home game for them.
Yeah, if you don't think Golden Tate is going to get up for this game after only having 11 yards against them in Week 14, you're crazy. I do think Daniel Jones' turnover potential is very interesting here. The Eagles are -5 in the turnover differential, which is bad, but this seems like an opportunity. I mean, look, Ronald Darby has no ball skills. I know he has 2 interceptions on the season. You're better off with Rasul Douglas if somebody is making a mistake in the air. Jalen Mills played well against the Cowboys. I think he'll play well in the rain. That said, though, guys can't bust in coverage. They just can't. You can't make any mistakes here. The Eagles need to get up early, and they need to control the game and control the clock. That's why Miles Sanders will be such a big deal here. Because if you can get Miles Sanders on a linebacker or even a defensive lineman as a receiver and he runs those wheel routes, big play all day.
So let's talk about some of those matchups now. We kind of
sure. What do you? Sure.
I mean, one that jumps to mind. I mean, Big V's actually played pretty well, by the way. We should.
Yeah, he has. He has played really well.
The whole idea of if he has the week to prepare, like, it is really true for him.
Yeah.
Marcus Golden had a sack or 2 against them.
Mm-hmm.
He's had a really good year. He has close to 10 sacks. I don't know if he's there yet, but that's kind of where, when you're looking, their defensive line's good. They have a couple of young guys on the Dalvin Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence, Leonard Williams hasn't really done anything for them.
Yeah.
I believe they have another defensive end. I can't think of who it is. But, I mean, that's the offensive line needs to play well, and Lane Johnson not being there is always a concern.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is less of a test for them because it's a 3-4 front, but not a less of a test, but I do think that it's a different challenge than facing a 4-3 defense where,
You're more thinking about, like, the linebackers.
Right. So, look, V's going to have a test. I mean, but he's shown that he can do it before. I actually think he's a better right tackle than he is a left tackle. Yeah. And having that preparation time, like you said, is important. He's just going to have to stand his ground. He's going to have to anchor well. The matchups that I'm really interested in are Dallas Goedert versus Antoine Bethea and DeAndre Baker versus J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. Let's start with the tight end versus the safety. Buffet's washed. And I'm probably going to regret saying this because I'll probably have 2 picks in this game.
He was the one who said they want to beat the Eagles.
Yeah, really not. Well, I mean, they got nothing to lose. Who cares?
Exactly, yeah.
But Zack Ertz destroyed him in Week 14. And Dallas Goedert had a nice catch on him, too.
When Ertz wasn't wide open.
Yeah. Well, that's, I mean, safety coverage breakdowns are pretty prevalent in the Giants' defense.
Very true.
I think that's going to be really interesting. Goddard's probably going to get at least a dozen targets in this game. I'd expect him to catch 9 of those. I think he'll at the very least duplicate his 9-catch, 91 yards and touchdown from last week. That's a good matchup for the Eagles. DeAndre Baker's had a weird rookie year. He seems to put his foot in his mouth both on the field and in the locker room. He's not good. And I do think if you can get into some jump ball matchups with J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, JJ's going to win. What I liked about what they did last week is they initially got him involved. Like they plotted out plays for JJ specifically. That first play of the game where Carson threaded the needle, and then he had another nice catch.
I'd like to see him a little more involved for 4 quarters, though.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think the thought process is with scripting plays that get him involved, at least you build up the confidence.
Make him a threat, yeah.
Yeah, you build up the confidence, you make the defense pay attention to him. Greg Ward's going to have a big game in this one. I'm expecting a lot of short area throws.
Maybe a wildcat?
Yeah. So I said this on the podcast after the game. While obviously they wanted to show that wildcat look against the Cowboys because it was something the Cowboys had never seen before, it's going to help them with game planning in this game. If they want to run the wildcat on 3rd and 1, they might be able to draw the Giants off sides. They might be able to mess with their timing. They might be able to force a timeout. You know, there's reasons to show that look when they showed that look. They waited to show that look. You know, there was a time where nothing was going well for them, and they could have easily just resorted to using that. They didn't. And so to use that last week's interesting to me. The Redskins ran a double reverse throw with Kelvin Harmon against the Giants last week, and if Kelvin Harmon isn't hit as he throws, it's a wide open touchdown. The Giants bust coverage consistently. DeAndre Baker doesn't know where he is half the time, it seems like, on tape. I can't speak for him, but it does kind of seem... I think he actually said that once, where he didn't even know what the coverage was. But he's had some, serious Ronald Darby moments. And if you can take advantage of that, that's great. Another matchup I want to talk about is Mike Remmers, the right tackle, versus Brandon Graham. Remmers surprisingly won the matchup last.
Because we thought they were going to destroy that.
I thought Brandon Graham was going to...
Did they only have like 1 sack that game or something?
Yeah, they had 2 sacks. That was the Vinny Curry.
Yeah, Vinny. Yeah, both of them.
Yeah. I thought Graham was going to eat his lunch, and that didn't happen. I do think now that Vinny's kind of caught some fire, I think they'll run a lot of stuff now where Brandon Graham goes inside with Fletcher Cox more often, and then you'll have Curry and Barnett out there. You'll have Sweat moving in. But look, Graham's got to deliver. He's been held out sack-wise, I believe 4 straight games. That's rough because he was trending towards having the best year of his career. He's a guy that, look, they paid a lot of money to, and he's been incredible against the run. He's still been a good pass rusher. He's still getting pressure, but he has to finish in this game. He's the guy that gets a lot of sack fumbles. He needs to be able to kind of jar the ball loose from Daniel Jones. They need to get at least 2 sack fumbles in this game to really dominate this one and set the tone. And I wouldn't be surprised if they got him early. Daniel Jones is going to be loose with the ball in the pocket. It's just how it is. They also have to make sure that they're paying attention to Daniel Jones because he does have mobility. And I'm wondering if they have Nathan Gary or Nigel Bradham kind of spy on him. I don't know if he's super athletic, but I don't know if he's that athletic that you dedicate that, but we'll see how that goes, especially in the rain.
And I imagine they'll have some combination of Malcolm and Rodney's shadowing Saquon, right?
Yeah, I'd imagine it's Saquon. I think Malcolm kind of followed around Saquon last.
I know sometimes Rodney's the one that will follow, but yeah, it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, and sometimes they'll do Nigel for whatever reason. I don't,
for whatever reason.
Yeah, he's got to tackle well, man. This has got to be a really good linebacker tackling performance.
Especially if Saquon is Saquon, because he gave him trouble last year.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's one of those things where if I'm Ken Flagel, like, this is my job. You know what I mean? You got to make sure that these guys are tackling well.
Think about a few guys' jobs are probably on the line this week if they were to lose this game.
Well, I think if the defense gives up a lot of points,
especially the defense, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about probably Corey Unlin, maybe even Jim Schwartz, which I think would be ridiculous.
I think Doug Peterson would have fewer qualms about firing guys in the defensive staff than the offensive staff because they're not as much his guys.
Well, if they struggle to score points, and the Giants...
I know. I'm just saying, like, all things being equal, I could see Doug being more willing to pull out the pink slip for guys on defense.
Yeah.
I mean, Carson Walsh, we still both probably believe he's not coming back next year.
I mean, and then again, what's like 6 wide receivers coaches in 6 years? Like, it's just like at some point you do need to like have
maybe hire somebody better.
Maybe.
All right, let's go on predictions.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, you go ahead.
I've got it 24-20 Eagles. I don't feel good about this. I've struggled to get a good read for this one.
Yeah,
I do think if they can hold them under 21 points, just like I thought if they could hold the Cowboys under 23 points, they'll win this game. Look, the Giants' defense is bad, but I also think the rain kind of, has no pun intended, has a trickle-down effect of like it's going to affect some matchups positively and negatively for the Eagles. And I just think from a tackling standpoint, they're going to have some trouble. I'm interested to see how the kickers fare in this one because Jake Elliott's the better kicker, but he has struggled as of late. They're not going to be able to attempt 50-yarders in the rain. But yeah, I think the team, I know this sounds ridiculous, the team that scores 3 touchdowns wins this game.
I think we're going to find out, I know I say this a lot, but it usually is true. We're going to find out pretty early in this game like what kind of Eagles the end is going to be.
Sure.
And I think they certainly can blow this team out. I don't know if I believe that they will. The Giants have played that game. They almost won in overtime a few weeks ago. It kind of was a momentum booster for them, and they've played pretty well the last 2 weeks. Their offense in particular. I mean, Daniel Jones threw 5 touchdowns against the Redskins. The Eagles didn't do that. So
yeah, I mean the Redskins' defense is bad, but
I mean, but you look at the two comparisons. And he didn't turn the ball over either, by the way. But the point being, like, I think the Giants are going to put up a better fight than maybe it seems like a lot of Eagles fans seem to realize. I've heard some people on the radio saying like 80% chance the Eagles win. Like, I don't see it that way.
I don't see it either.
We have almost the same exact score. I have Eagles 24, Giants 17, which kind of plays into your if they hold them under 20, you think they can win.
Yeah.
And I think if the Giants score more than 3 touchdowns, then I don't know.
I think it's the first team to 3 touchdowns wins this game. And the thing is, too, is I do think you need to set yourself up for, like, hey, there's going to be missed extra points probably. There's, I think, from the Eagles' perspective, you just have to play very disciplined football. What I liked about after the game, from their perspective, no one was boastful. No one said, yeah, we're going to go win this playoff game right now. Yeah, we know we can win this game. We know blah, blah, blah. It was, we're concerned about the Giants. That means that they are focused. Not that focus matters all that much. Most teams are focused in week 5 and still lose. You know what I mean? So, the rain, the added element. Like, had it not been raining, I probably would have picked the Eagles like 31-20. Now I'm kind of like, I don't know.
A little more even, yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing about this season, maybe more than last year, is like week to week how quickly the narratives will change. So if the Eagles lose this game, then all of a sudden the idea that Doug is amazing in December, everybody will stop saying that, But if they win it, then it's like that's why it's so funny how like much the needle is thread in the discussion around this team.
Well, I had a conversation with another beat writer before the game about how, because he took issue with us saying that it wasn't Carson's biggest game against the Cowboys, and he's like, if Carson plays well in this game, it's all anybody's going to talk about, especially if they win.
Not if they lose against the Giants.
Yeah, it's all for naught. If you know what I mean, like, and Carson's had a good season playing 16 games. He could become the first quarterback in Eagles history to throw for over 4,000 yards.
I didn't realize that, but
they
don't have that illustrious quarterback history.
So right now he's got 3750. He's averaging 250 a game.
so he's 250 away.
And he's 250 away. I mean, the rain could change the elements. He needs 167 yards to break Donovan McNabb's single-season passing record, which I believe is 3,916.
I was saying, it's kind of crazy that McNabb didn't, but it also was a different era, like in the modern era. He was 4,000.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that was the year with Terrell Owens. So,
and it was the year with T.O., yeah.
Yeah. But I think when you look at what Carson's been able to do, they're going to need him to throw in this game, but they also need to be able to kind of like reel him back, because this is a game that if you try to play hero ball, you're probably going to make mistakes. And I think that's where Daniel Jones is going to struggle. He needs to use his veteran. Carson needs to be a veteran in this game.
Yeah, fumbles can't happen. All right, well, let's read some comments before we go. Let's see. E-Fig. Carson is about to turn 27. Barring another catastrophic injury, he will have his first healthy offseason in 2 years. The consistency will come in time, and I expect a huge leap next year.
I agree.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that he's going to be starting his 16th game is major.
Well, he needs to finish it. But
he has to finish the game, too. But Mr. Ridley, they have to keep playing like this. This is from the Cowboys postgame pod. They have to keep playing like this. Giants will give their all. Next week is another playoff game. You ain't wrong. Let's see. Marcel Powell, D-line feast this week, and Eagles put the playoffs on notice. 35-14 prediction. B. Lisley, second rounder stepped up. Dallas, J.J. Miles, and Jones. Yeah, we didn't really talk about Sidney, but I think he's earned a bigger role at least. We'll see if he can, when he's playing more during a game, if he can still play that well.
Yeah, he's kind of like
a late game guy.
He's done a really good job as a relief pitcher. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I mean, if that's what he is, then that's okay. It's not ideal for a second round pick, but if that's what he is in the future, then that's fine.
Hey, you want to be 4 deep at corner? And by the way, we should say that Doug Peterson acknowledged that Rasul Douglas would.
He did say that. Yeah. Although Jim Schwartz often has a mind of his own.
Well, yeah, Jim Schwartz really left it wide open. And Doug kind of scaled back, too, a little bit Thursday. He kind of said, hey, we have other options moving forward. Yikes. Poor Rasul.
And Jamie and Candace Palmer, our favorite married couple.
My guy and lady.
They said they're subscribed to the Messaging Insider, and they love it. Keep up the great work. So you heard it from them. They are our most devoted listeners.
The couple that YouTubes and texts together stays together, I've been told.
You have been told.
I got to talk to my wife about that.
Hey, do you want to start commenting on our podcast?
Yeah.
Audrey
Put our son through college.
Ferber says, all you can do is have a chance. That's all we can ask for. Hey, that's a positive message.
Fair enough.
King in the North says, Zach, can you try to go 10 minutes without chuckling?
No.
Number 1, no. Number 2, thank you for spelling my name right. Number 3, I like the variation of saying chuckling instead of annoying laugh or like something like.
Well, because that's what you do. You do kind of chuckle. Yeah. You do kind of chuckle.
Maybe a chortle.
You guffaw a little
maybe
bit.
A chortle every now and then.
Yeah.
Marcel Powell, I told y'all Cowboys overrated. Big V didn't do bad.
But I will say DeMarcus Lawrence had some really positive moments in that game.
Yeah, he did. Cheapskate coins on the upside. If we do make the playoffs, we should have Lane, Deshaun, and Jordan back. The Deshaun thing is interesting, but until like we actually see him playing and then playing a full game, like it's hard to like. I mean, they have to get that far too.
I mean, but imagine that story though.
That would be wild.
Like,
I mean, if he's Deshaun from week 1, like they can beat anybody.
Right, but like that's the thing. Like,
he's like the biggest X factor in the playoffs.
When you write that Super Bowl book, it's like, hey, they had to struggle all this time, and everybody
they did this so everybody would doubt them again, and they could have that narrative.
But like everybody was like, signing Deshaun was such a mistake,
and then win the Super Bowl.
Oh man, Super Bowl MVP with like 120 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Like it feels like ages ago, but like the amount of excitement for Deshaun coming back all offseason, like that's all anybody wanted to talk about.
I think there's been kind of an awakening. Have you felt it? With Deshaun, like the videos that he's putting out, man, I think a lot of people are looking like if they can win that first round matchup, obviously they have to beat the Giants. Yeah, like he could be Trump the Braves.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I mean,
that would be very cool.
Yes. I mean, I bet he'd more likely be a decoy that first game at least. Like, again, we're talking like crazy hypotheticals from people who have.
I don't even think they've even thought about it, to be honest, internally.
No, I don't. Deshaun maybe has. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Deshaun's probably like, I'm going to go out to San Fran or Green Bay.
Both in press conferences this week and this podcast, like nobody's even like talked about Nelson Aguilar. Like, nobody's asked about where he's at with his injury. I don't think anybody's expected to play anymore. But.
So, fun behind-the-scenes note, He's the one that handed out press credentials this week
really?
and yelled them out in the middle of the.
I need mine from you, by the way.
Yeah, that was a real interesting experience. We were actually the first ones up. He said NJ.com, wow. And I said, Nelly, what do you got? I thought he was
something you would say.
I thought he was gonna yell at me about something you wrote.
About something I wrote. Yeah. Helamongo 208 says, "Remember, if the Eagles get into the playoffs, everyone is 0-0."
That's accurate.
A guy named Captain Galaxy started his comment with "Hey Skippy." I can't really read the rest of it because it's not nice, and there's bad words in there. But we thought "Hey Skippy" was funny.
Here, read Russell's.
Russell Kempy says, "The Cowboys and Eagles are both train wrecks waiting to happen. Their records tell the story. There's no way either team can compete beyond the NFC East. San Francisco Saints and Packers will gobble them up like hot tacos for $1.
What about cold tacos?
Like Jack in the Box tacos? That's you get 2 for $1 actually. I think that's the winner for today.
Yeah, you know what's interesting to me?
Anytime you can do like a metaphor like that, like we're all for that.
You know what's interesting to me is I actually think them getting a home game is like a real blessing for them. I would agree completely with Russell if they were on the road for all throughout the playoffs.
I mean, they deserve to be on the road, to be honest.
Right, they do. They don't even deserve to be on the road, frankly.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're playing well the last 4 games.
Crumbles, so.
But yeah, I think speaking of home field advantage, I do get the sense that there will be an F-ton
of Eagles fans. It's going to be more Eagles fans, I think.
Right, which is important because when you consider what they're allowing on the road points-wise to what they're allowing at home, maybe that has an effect. Obviously, this is a place that they're used to playing in. They've won 10 of the last 11 games against the Giants, so, you know, I mean, they're pretty well-versed in winning at MetLife. But, yeah, like, I'm intrigued. This game, like, I can't get a good feel for it. I know you said, like, people were saying, like, an 85% chance or 80%
I heard
chance.
that on the radio last night.
I'd say 65%.
Yeah, I think
that's how I feel.
I would say like 60%, but I'm the more pessimistic one. So.
I do think they are in tune for a letdown. I also think it's very hard to win 4 games in a row. Yes. It's also hard, no matter how much they've proven it, it's hard to beat a team twice.
Especially this close together.
Yeah, and especially with a team that has really nothing to lose. Mm-hmm. They've never played Daniel Jones before, and that could be tricky. But I do think the Eagles are coming at this with the right mentality. They're practicing over at the Link on Friday. Like, they are taking this very, very seriously. They know if they don't win, they're probably going home unless Washington pulls an upset, which Case Keenum, you never know. But do you really want to win a division by losing?
By 8-8 and losing?
Yeah, I mean,
that would be such a weird thing to even cover.
I mean, one of our YouTube users said they want to put the playoffs on notice. Yeah, you want to put the playoffs on notice. You want to make an example of the Giants. You want to win this game outright.
You can't beat the Giants. You really think you're going to beat the Seahawks or whatever. You know?
I mean, they need to get up early in this game. They need to be up like 13-0. Like, really, this needs to be or 14-0. They have to establish themselves as the better team because they are the better team. And really, of the teams in the NFC East, they probably are the most deserving of winning this NFC East division. Not saying much, but it's all right here. If they lay an egg here, that's all anybody's going to remember. It's all anybody's going to talk.
Especially if the season ends, and then it's like it's going to be the lasting image of the season.
Nobody's going to care that Carson and the Eagles beat the Cowboys. No one's going to care that they went on a 3-game winning streak. Nobody's going to care that Deshaun Jackson was out for the entire season. They've got to win this game. Period. Done. It's that they have to win this game. And you know what? If they only win by 1 point, 1 to 3 points, it's a win.
Yeah.
You've just got to move on. That's what it is.
You just got to keep on winning. All right, we'll end on that. Again, sign up for Eagles Extra. You know you want to do it. NJ.com/Eagles. Do it. Leave us some more comments, and we'll get you guys with a post-game pod on Sunday.
Deuces.